Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be doing some additional coverage on our Azulle Byte 4. You'll notice we've got a couple of things scattered around the bench that were actually review units themselves. So we've got our K600 TV from Logitech. I have my Ames DM1000 running temperature probe duties. Normally I'd use the MS8040, but since I'm using an external recording device here, the IO Gear Upstream Pro Dual, I don't have room for the bench meter and the additional laptop in order to record from it, since it doesn't really like 64-bit Windows 10. If anyone has any third-party software that does play nicely with an MS8040, please leave me a note in the comments below, because I'd love to be able to use that for something like this to make some pretty charts. I'll make some charts in a different video when we test some of its temperature limits and hotbox it. But in the meantime, so the DM1000 is here. Right now it's at about 102 Fahrenheit. That's about 30 degrees above ambient. 39 Celsius, which is 24 Celsius in here, or 76 Fahrenheit. The skin temp is warm to the touch, but not terrible. I wouldn't bother if you were in contact with it. Part of that is I was actually trying to run some of this about 20 minutes ago and forgot to start my record in OBS, so we're doing it all again. Additional storage, since it only has 64 gigs of onboard storage, which is sufficient for a lot of things. However, not all of this, especially not all at once, is being provided by an ADATA SE730H, which is what we've used previously with devices like this. And finally, our studio monitor is our nice, beautiful P16C Lin-Q from Viotech, which normally lives in my laptop bag. We are using a USB-C power cable and a dedicated HDMI for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have to loop HDMI through the Upstream Pro Dual, so I'm not recording directly on the Byte 4, negatively impacting our results. And number two, the Byte 4 doesn't actually support video out over USB-C, so we're just powering the monitor that way. Although the panel itself is more than happy to run video over USB-C, and I use it that way on a semi-regular basis. So, that all said, let's go ahead and start. We're going to start up with Minecraft. Which we're going to do a little bit differently than what we've done before. Number one, I'm going to open up the settings and talk about what we've changed, but I've already changed it. Number two, we're going to use the Byte 4 both to play and run the world simulation. Normally, the mini PCs like this, I actually offload running the world simulation to an external server. However, the Byte 4 is actually comfortably fast enough to do both at 1080p above 30 frames per second, as we're going to see in a little bit here. So that is just a huge step forward when I can finally say you can run 30 frames a second or more. You can run at 1080p. You can run the world on the same system. And my only real caveat is going to be is that if you actually do want to have multiple people on the order of like 3 to 4, you're probably going to still want a dedicated server. You could use one of these as a dedicated server, and certainly wouldn't be the worst application for one, but you wouldn't want to load it up with too many mods all at once. Yep. Single player. We're going to create a new world. We're going to turn the cheats on, and we're going to pick a fun seed. I don't know. So this is this is my third time attempting to record this. And we can see predictably during world generation, CPU usage is at 100%. One thing that strikes me as interesting is that the memory usage is about 3,600 megs. That tells me that moving this system to dual channel memory, which I don't actually know if it supports dual channel, it might be single channel. I'm going to look that up here real quick. At least moving it to two memory modules, giving it a boost in capacity would be a huge step forward. And you know what? We're going to just double check which CPU we're using. This is a J4125. It does support dual channel memory. It says it only supports 8 gig. We're going to test that, hopefully. I'm hoping to try and push 16 into it. So it looks like by default we are at about 37, 35 frames per second. Did it actually start me on an island? Oh, that's great. But where's my world chest, or my bonus chest? So you can see some of the world generation is still running in the background where the CPU is still at about 90%. We're actually going to see that slowly drop off. And we're going to see the frame rate creep up a little bit once it's done. So I think my bonus chest didn't actually happen. There must be some lava over here. Oh, sweet, a lava lake. Something growl at me? Those are not friendly dogs. Alright. Do. Well, I must have forgot to turn on the bonus chest, so let's just do this the old-fashioned way and go ahead and punch down a tree. You'll notice our frame rate's actually up at about 70 frames per second now. The CPU has finally finished generating the world and is more than happy to do some of this. All right. Oop, and I missed one. Not bad. Didn't really notice any issues there. None of the popping back in that you'll get on overloaded systems as far as the blocks for the tree is concerned. Frame rate's not super stable. It's trying to aim for 60 or higher. But we're comfortably above 30, which is really where we want to be, especially on a game like this. Much more than 30 frames a second. It's not CSGO, it's not a first-person shooter, it's not going to be life or death there. So let's go ahead and get some explosives in the mix. And what I want is a fire charge. This will be fun. I don't think I've done one that involved trees before. if anyone remembers, this is not the most scientific way to test anything, but I find that a large event like this, if there is any room to crash the system, typically does so. You know, I don't have a set size that I'm working on. I don't blow up the same size island every single time. I just want to make it go away. So normally we'd hunt around for one a little bit. In fact, we're going to fly around a little and then come back to this in just a second, because we have not done that yet. Because that so yeah, no jittery, no dramatic changes in speed, no bouncing around. Frame rate's not quite staying at 30 frames a second, but also isn't plummeting to like 2 either. So perfectly happy. Lava and fire seem to be pretty non-issues for it. What's this? Just floating in the air. Random bits of ground. Alright. Well, with that said and done, so the frame rate dropped to 17 and then immediately rebounded back to 70. And the island is gone. Overall, not bad. Seems to have flung some TNT quite some ways away. It took out a large portion of the coastline over there. Alright, so overall, we'll say we're running in the 30 to 60 range. We did see some dips below 30. I don't think you're going to see a ton of those while you're playing. There is room to adjust some of that. So, where is it? So I'm running it full screen. I am running fast graphics with smooth lighting off. You can always turn down the render distance. You can always just turn particles off. I have them on decreased, which I think was the default. You can adjust some of your other map levels, distances, fields of view, stuff like that. So there's room to tweak some of that. You could, and actually let's try this right here. Will this let me run? We'll say 1600 by 900. Yep, 1600 by 900, which now I'm seeing almost consistently 50s and 70s. Slows down a little bit flying around, so yeah, I mean, bumping the resolution down like this, not super visible. I'm only on a 16-inch screen and I'm, I don't know, 2 feet away from it, so there's room to adjust that. You could definitely get more out of it that way. So I'm fairly impressed. I've never actually been... How do I want to phrase this? I have never been certain of running Minecraft as both a application and the game server itself on a unit like this before. And the Byte 4 is finally in a position where I'm comfortable doing that. Dual channel memory, more memory is going to help the GPU. It just is. And we will reevaluate a couple of games when we do a larger upgrade video. So we'll make sure to cover that in the future. We are going to basically push this thing to its limit, just as a preview there. We're going to put an NVMe SSD in it. We're going to put a SATA SSD in it. We're going to put more memory in it. We're going to try for 16, which sometimes works with units like this that don't officially support it. I'm only going to promise you it's going to work. So, anyway, back to the application at hand. Minecraft, I am going to say, don't expect this level of performance and responsiveness if you're going to build a replica CPU inside of it. I mean, I've seen people build 8008s and stuff like that, and full-blown calculators in here. You're just not going to do that on a fanless system. There's not enough memory, there's not enough CPU to keep up with something that big, that complex. Minecraft is a game that can go from playable and you're happy with it to, oh my god, what have I done, very quickly based on what you demand out of it. Normal person, run around, you know, find some zombies. What happened? Just your typical player there. Not going to care. Couple of mods, as long as they're not too crazy. Things like MCMMO or, well, I guess you would run that server side. Things of that nature that don't add a whole ton to it, but are mostly quality of life. Things that introduce stuff like teleporters. Not going to be a huge issue. Optifine's going to give you a little bit more room to get some more performance out of it. Of course, that also gives you room to throw shaders on it, so pick your poison there. All right, so I think that is enough for Minecraft. And let's go ahead and fire up Homeworld Remastered. A little bit of background. Homeworld Remastered was released a couple of years ago at this point. Was originally released in 2001. This is a franchise that's actually in testing for a couple of things. Homeworld 3 is supposed to be out, I think, this year, maybe early next year. And there is some stuff with a Homeworld Mobile also going on right now. So we'll do this. Yeah, we'll just do full random. But, so it's on an updated engine. It is a 2015 or so era title, if memory serves. But it's not a AAA game from this year. It is one of the better examples of a multi-dimensional real-time strategy game. Where we get
destroy enemy motherships.
All of the freedom you could possibly want and imagine.
New challenge. Harvest 20,000 resources. Production underway. New challenge. Destroy 20 enemy ships. Production underway. New challenge. Build 20 ships.
Roger.
New challenge. Research 10 technologies.
Reporting.
Scout complete.
Resources locked in.
New challenge. Survive 20 minutes.
Standing by. Collection
Hoping
confirmed.
it doesn't take us 20 minutes.
Scout
Looks like
complete.
We're running at about 80 frames a second.
Resources
Memory
downrange.
usage is under 3 gigabytes. And once again, we are GPU bound here.
Collection
94% on the
Scout
GPU.
complete.
Ready. Construction underway. Construction underway. Construction underway. Assembly underway.
Scout complete. New research available. Research ship complete.
Berths are clear. Assembly underway.
Scout complete. Scout complete. Scout complete. Scout complete.
Berths are clear.
Mothership. Probe complete. Research complete. New research available.
Copy.
Scout complete. Mothership. Scout complete. Scout complete.
Alright,
Probe
let's see who
complete.
we're dealing with.
Scout complete. Probe dispatched. Scout
And this is
complete.
where some of that multiple
Built
degrees
20
comes in.
ships. Probe complete. New challenge. Build 40 ships. Scout complete.
Oh, talk about random chance there. Okay.
Scout complete.
So I ended up with the Homeworld 1 protagonist
Group
and
1
the AI
designated. Probe in position. Scout
ended
complete.
up with the bad
Attack
guys.
vector laid in.
Research complete. New research available. Production underway. Scout complete.
Group 1 copies. Target confirmed.
Mothership. Scout complete. Production underway. Production underway. Scout complete.
Reporting. Construction underway. Construction underway. Construction underway.
Bounty received.
Assembly underway.
Scout complete.
Assembly underway. Group 1. Group 1 copies.
Alright.
got company.
Scout complete. Light corvette complete. Unidentified probe detected. Research complete. New research available.
Gotcha.
Bounty received.
Got enemy contact.
Yeah.
Scout
So
complete.
we're seeing some dips into the 30 range when I'm focused on this, watching some of the flares go off. But we're mostly staying 61
Scout.
frames per second, give or take.
Bounty received.
I expect a decent
Situation here.
dip when this thing
Research
explodes.
New research available.
All right, let's heat it up in here. Group 1 reporting.
Light corvette complete.
Bounty received.
This is looking good. Stay tight.
Scout complete.
Bounty received.
Stay on top of them. All stations reported by the
Huh. Okay.
Light corvette complete.
Light fire confirmed.
Bounty received.
Got company. You're fine.
Scout complete.
Bounty received.
Light corvette complete. Research complete. New research available. Scout complete.
Acknowledged.
Group 2 designated.
Group 1 reporting.
Scout complete.
Bounty received.
Escort pattern locked in.
Light corvette complete. Mothership. Production underway. Production underway.
Acknowledged. Berths are clear. Assembly underway.
Attack bomber complete.
Bounty received.
Construction underway. Berths are clear.
Interceptor complete. Destroyed 20 enemy ships. Attack bomber complete.
Bounty received.
Interceptor complete.
Group 1 reporting.
Group 2 reports enemy contact. Light corvette complete. New challenge. Destroy 40 enemy ships. Group 2 under attack.
Light fire confirmed.
Interceptor complete. Attack bomber complete. Group 2 reports enemy
And the
contact.
CPU's kind of
Sensors are
stupid and
detecting
will likely
unidentified
send
threat. Light corvette complete.
far too
All right,
many
let's heat it
ships
up
to
in
go
here.
capture that.
Attack bomber complete. Interceptor complete.
All right, hang in there. Reporting.
Research complete. New research available. Interceptor complete. Attack bomber complete. Light corvette complete. Attack bomber complete. Interceptor complete. Built 80 ships.
Assembly underway.
Interceptor complete.
This is a cakewalk. No problem.
New challenge. Build 160 ships. Probe deployed. Interceptor complete. Attack bomber complete.
Bounty received.
Interceptor complete. Mothership. Attack bomber complete. Interceptor complete. Light corvette complete. Analysis of unknown relic complete. Interceptor complete. Attack bomber complete. Production underway. Production underway. Interceptor complete. Attack bomber complete. Research complete. New research available. Interceptor complete.
Locked on target.
Interceptor complete. Attack bomber complete. Interceptor complete. Attack bomber complete. Mothership. Interceptor complete. Interceptor complete.
Standing by.
Research complete.
Attack coordinates locked in. Docking with mothership.
Mothership.
Oops.
Attack bomber complete.
Confirmed.
Bounty received.
Moving to intercept. Docking signal green.
Resource injection received.
Attack bomber complete.
Bounty received.
This is looking good. Stay tight. Drawing light fire.
Production underway. Assault frigate complete. Attack bomber complete.
Bounty received.
Research complete. Attack bomber complete.
Bounty received.
Ready. Target destroyed. Construction underway. Berths are clear.
Bounty received.
Construction underway. Assembly underway.
Research complete. New research available.
Construction underway. Berths are clear.
New challenge. Research 20 technologies. Light corvette complete.
Copy. Docking with mothership.
Research complete.
Looks like I might
New
have beat
research
somebody to
available.
a punch with
New frigates available for construction. Mothership. Light corvette complete. Assault frigate complete.
Ready.
Research complete. New frigates available for construction. Light corvette complete.
En route. Destination canceled. Confirmed.
Light corvette complete. Research complete. New capital ships available for construction. Resources recovered from relic. Assault frigate complete. New crate detected. Light corvette complete.
Group 1. Group 2 copies.
Group 1 reinforced.
Attack vector laid in.
Assault frigate complete. Light corvette complete.
Attack coordinates locked in.
Research complete. New research available. New capital ships available for construction.
Group 1 standing by. Copy.
Group 4 designated.
Attack coordinates locked in.
Light corvette complete.
Standing by. Moving to destination. Roger.
Group 2 assigned.
Roger.
Group 3 designated. Light corvette complete. Assault frigate complete.
Bounty received.
Research complete.
Moving into formation.
Bounty received.
Roger.
Alright.
Research
and
complete.
to really make a mess
Light
of
Corvette
things,
Bounty received.
No problem. No problem. Initiating hyperspace jump. Supporting friendly units.
Assault frigate
which
complete.
Watch for
should
debris. Standing by.
cause these to pick up a move order the second they
Light
materialize.
Corvette complete.
Exit coordinates confirmed.
Bounty received.
Acknowledged.
And we'll start with
Light Corvette complete.
Target confirmed.
Carrier complete.
Resource injection received. Bounty received.
Destroyed 40 enemy ships.
and
Group 2 reporting.
Assault frigate complete.
Engage capital ship.
Failed to harvest 20,000 resources. Light Corvette complete. New challenge. Destroy 80 enemy ships.
Goodbye.
Group 2 under attack. New challenge. Harvest 40,000 resources. Group 2 reports enemy contact.
Assembly underway.
Light Corvette complete.
Bounty received.
Group 2 reporting. Light fire.
Group 2 under attack.
Standing by. Stay on top of them.
Bounty received.
Let's stay calm. Gotcha.
Light
real
Corvette
quick.
complete.
Temperatures were at about 117 Fahrenheit. Toasty, not super comfortable, but not gonna burn you either.
We're under fire. Hit your targets. We've got enemy contact.
Light Corvette complete.
Construction underway. Assembly underway. Assembly underway.
Bounty received.
Assault frigate complete. Production underway.
Right. I'm gonna be real bummed if I wipe the AI before I even get a chance
Multi-gun
to
Corvette complete.
build a heavy cruiser.
Watch for debris. We're under fire.
Assault frigate complete. Iron cannon frigate complete.
Maybe I should have made the AI more difficult for this.
Multi-gun Corvette complete.
Bounty received.
Acknowledged.
Bounty received.
Watch your 6. We're under fire. Fill that container block.
Multi-gun Corvette complete.
Bounty received.
Copy.
Bounty received.
Assault frigate complete.
Fire confirmed.
Multi-gun Corvette complete.
Standing by.
Assault frigate complete.
Engage capital ship.
Huh.
Iron cannon
I
frigate
don't know
complete.
where it could jump to.
Multi-gun
Well,
Corvette
I mean,
complete.
space
New
is
crates
vast.
detected. Research complete. New capital ships available for construction.
Bounty received.
Finally.
Production underway.
Bounty received.
Multi-gun Corvette complete.
Bounty received.
Carrier complete.
Alright. Carrier explosion, 35 frames a second. All of this combat going on, 50 frames a second.
Copy. Intercept course punched in.
Bounty received.
Resources recovered from Relic. Destroyed 80 enemy ships. Bonus resources awarded.
Resource injection received.
Assault frigate complete.
Bounty received.
Roger. Confirmed.
New challenge. Destroy 160 enemy ships. Multi-gun corvette complete. Ion cannon frigate complete.
Initiating hyperspace jump. Ready. Exiting hyperspace.
Bounty received.
Multi-gun corvette complete. Missile destroyer complete.
Roger.
Bounty received.
Hyperspace coordinates locked in.
Group 2 reports enemy contact.
Yep, I didn't mean to get the ones over there, but I'll make this all quicker.
Exit coordinates confirmed.
Group 2 under attack. Assault frigate complete.
Standing by. Moving to intercept.
Multi-gun corvette complete. Iron cannon frigate complete.
I wonder where it ran to.
Bounty received.
Multi-gun corvette complete.
Attack complete. Awaiting further orders.
Bounty received.
Berths are clear. Berths are clear. Construction underway. Berths are clear.
Resources recovered from relic.
Construction underway. Construction underway. Assembly underway. Assembly underway.
Multi-gun corvette complete.
Roger.
Interceptor complete.
Oh. Well, it would appear that
Moving
my
to destination.
hyperspace antics actually
Interceptor complete.
ran through
Heavy
the
corvette complete.
resources
Assault frigate
that
complete.
the injections give me.
Built 160 ships. Interceptor complete. Multi-gun corvette complete.
No.
Interceptor complete. New challenge. Build the target number of ships. Interceptor complete.
Yeah,
Heavy
they
corvette complete. Ion cannon frigate complete. Interceptor complete.
cut back to the target number, huh?
Multi-gun corvette complete. Interceptor complete.
Ready. Reporting.
Sensors array complete. Interceptor complete.
Engage capital ship.
Heavy corvette complete. Interceptor complete.
Combat stations look sharp.
Multi-gun corvette complete. Interceptor complete.
We got company.
Survived 20 minutes. Bonus resources awarded. Interceptor complete. Missile destroyer complete.
All right, hang in there. Target confirmed.
Heavy corvette complete.
Standing by.
Interceptor complete. New challenge. Survive 20 minutes.
Ready.
Interceptor complete. Heavy cruiser complete.
Frigate under attack.
Words I've been waiting
Resources
to hear
recovered from relic.
this
Interceptor
whole
complete.
match.
Enemy neutralized. Awaiting orders.
Heavy corvette complete. Interceptor complete.
Ready. Stay on top of them.
Bounty received.
Interceptor complete.
This is looking good. Stay tight. Reported. Ready.
Bounty received.
Interceptor complete.
Initiating hyperspace jump.
Heavy corvette complete.
I caught one.
Bounty received.
All stations reported by the numbers.
Interceptor complete. Multi-gun corvette complete.
Bounty received.
Exiting hyperspace.
And as long as I didn't do something dumb, like hyperspace into something,
Got company.
Interceptor complete. Heavy corvette complete.
Acknowledged. Supporting friendly units. Frigate under attack. Attack clearance received.
Group 2 reports enemy contact.
I do love those turret-mounted ion guns.
Acknowledged. Copy. Attack
Although
coordinates locked in.
Attack bomber complete.
Roger.
it's really cool.
Target confirmed. Reloading.
That missile volley function.
Attack vector laid. Ready. Subsystem target acquired.
Heavy Corvette complete.
Attack vector laid in. Confirmed.
Resources recovered from relic.
Ready. Attack the capital ship.
Multi-gun Corvette complete. Attack bomber complete. Attack bomber complete. Destroyer complete. Attack bomber complete.
Confirmed. All right, let's get it up in here. Attacking capital ship.
Attack bomber complete.
So you can see the AI is trying to escape up. There's actually a small resource cluster towards the top of the map that
Attack bomber complete.
generally gets ignored by players
Multi-gun
just because
Corvette
it's that
complete.
far out of the default plane of engagement. But that is the AI's like go-to hiding spot.
Stand by.
Group 3 destroyed.
Right, confirmed. Enemy control.
That's it.
Group 2 destroyed. Corvette complete. Attack bomber complete.
But the match didn't end.
Roger.
Attack bomber complete.
Tells me that someone escaped somewhere.
Heavy Corvette complete.
Hyperspace coordinates locked in.
Attack bomber complete.
Copy.
Attack bomber complete.
Exit coordinates confirmed.
Resources recovered from relic.
Resource injection received.
Attack bomber complete.
Ready. Moving to destination.
Attack bomber complete. Attack bomber complete.
Well, aha.
Copy.
There it is.
Lock all weapons on target. Capital ship locked in.
Attack bomber complete. Attack bomber complete. Attack bomber complete. Destroyer complete. Attack bomber complete.
Stay on top of them.
Attack bomber complete.
Bounty received.
I guess they didn't make it into hyperspace in time. All right, so yeah, Homeworld 4D or 3D strategy game, not bad at all. I think the batteries in my keyboard just died. Nope, there we go. So what happened? Well, anyway. Settings-wise, we ran this normal-ish. We ran it full screen, 1920, 1080, no frame sync, no anti-aliasing. Texture quality was at 5, which is just one notch below medium. That's the default that it picked for this system. Same thing for the texture size. Lighting was on, shadows were off, battle scars were off, battle scar limit was set to capital ships. And a lot of the HDR and the motion blur, I just don't like the way they look. That's got nothing to do with performance. UI, HUD, scale, all that set to default. So overall, pretty out of the box settings. So not bad. All right, so next game's up, and I'm gonna apologize that this is like my 4th or 5th time doing this. I've managed to forget to start OBS twice, so I might gloss over a few things that I would normally pay attention to. We're going to run Borderlands Game of the Year Edition. We're running at 1287.20. Honestly, most of this is set to low. In fact, the only one that was even on high was the foliage quality. But that's okay. So we're going to fire this up. Borderlands has been kind of fussy. Sometimes I get audio, sometimes I don't. I think it's actually related to my capture card being in the HDMI stream. I don't think it's got anything to do with this. I've checked. I don't have new drivers available. At least I don't have new drivers available without updating the Windows 10 version. So that's actually the smoothest launch that it's had so far. So we're just gonna fire this up, and I should have a pretty straightforward mission for the next one. I think this is where I'm supposed to go get the power coupling for the med vendor so I can stop, dying. There we go. All right. Yep. Power coupling, med vendor repaired, purchased a shield. Should be pretty straightforward. Mostly some skags to shoot at. To access your map, hold tab. Don't need to worry about that. But I am going to try and pick off a couple of these guys before I get out of my way. Or before they get in my way, I should say. Do-do-do. Come on. There we go. Just the one? Nope. And we can see that the frame rate's not great, but it's a lot better than it could be. And honestly, I think a little bit of upgrading here and there wouldn't actually hurt. So we're running at just under 30 frames per second. I think a bump to dual channel memory could bring us to a more stable frame rate, or potentially just over. And that's on the list of things that I'm going to test. Now, there are times when this drops down to 10 frames per second. You actually saw that on the load-in where... Oh, well, yeah, that's the shield I want. It was like 2 frames per second on that initial screen. But once it loaded and it was doing things... Now, I could have swore... that I bought that already. Nope, there we go. It's equipped. Yes, I have a shield. Anyway, as I was saying, dual channel might help. It's not going to work miracles. Power and temperature wise, it's pulling about 14 watts, 14.2, 14.8 while running around in Borderlands. Not too shabby. This is a 2009 game, but it was a AAA game at that point. Now, clearly you don't want to go fire up the latest version of Doom or even Borderlands 3 on a system like this, but if you want to play older titles like this, it's perfectly capable. I think a memory upgrade would help it. And, you know, if you intend to use it for that kind of thing, you're going to want to fill it with more storage. Let's go ahead and try a modern MMO. And this is actually an amusing example, because if you look at some of my older articles, Star Trek Online behaves very differently. And part of that is that because it's an MMO, it's kind of a moving target for review use. It continually gets updates. It got a big graphical update just before we got the Byte 3. And I think there were some performance issues in the game engine then, because the Byte 3 performed worse than the Access 3. And that didn't make a whole lot of sense, since the Byte units, they're much bigger physically. They've got more room to dissipate any heat they build up. They're just... And this is an Access 3, not an Access 4. But you can see it's got, I don't know, 6 times the volume internally, we'll say. Maybe 5. I'd have to do a little math to figure that one out correctly. So lots more internal volume and typically better components. Or I should say, room for higher end components. My Access sample had 4 gigs of RAM instead of the 8 that my Byte sample did. Alright, anyway. So, Star Trek Online. Still trying to figure out loading things. We can see the CPU's pegged. This is one where RAM is at a premium, and I bet if I bring up Task Manager, I will see that I have 5.1 out of 7.2 committed, which means that we are paging things in and out off of the internal eMMC. Moving the OS to an NVMe SSD helps when you run into that scenario, and just having more RAM helps too. Alright, so let's go ahead and grab some garbage item. And we're going to go ahead
I have discovered the location you're wasting.
and fire up Stranded in Space, which we use Stranded in Space specifically since it contains a nice mix of ground and space without being huge and drawn out. Now, this is a relatively quick mission since it's intended for new players. Performance-wise, we can see that the memory usage hasn't really dialed back any. The graphics is pegged at 100%. CPU's running at about 50. Now, performance-wise, we're running Star Trek Online on fairly low details, but we are running at 1600/900, which is a step up from the 720p that we used to run this at. And there's that. All right. And we can see some dips when we have large explosions on screen. I do think a move to dual channel would help smooth some of this out. It would help keep things, moving to the graphics card more freely. Once again, not a magic bullet, not going to suddenly make this run 150 frames per second at 4K, but it's worth having. And overall, the performance isn't bad. I remember people struggling with this on integrated graphics before the graphical update, and they'd do stuff and they get 2 frames per second when there was a large explosion drop like that. It happened. I saw it happen because I have Afterburner open and reading statistics for me, but I didn't feel it. Nothing in here is causing it to turn into a slideshow. I don't feel a ton of stutter. It's not as pretty as it could be, but it's not the end of the world either. And we're going to skip that guy because we're a tactical officer, so I can't save him. On the ground here, where my inventory's full. Hovering around 30 frames per second. Not bad. Seen a couple of times that we tick up higher than that, but overall, we're right around, here it is, 40. 35, 36, 29. It's not the most stable frame rate. Power-wise, 14.7 watts, actually pulling a little more power than I saw during Borderlands. Not a lot. Temperature's up to 104. I do think that this is a bit better balanced on how it leverages some of the system resources, and it does do things like streaming assets off the SSD that I know it's designed to I know it's designed to utilize resources more efficiently than Borderlands, just due to constantly being updated over the past 10 years. Alright, locate the warp core. Here's the warp core. Speak to the captain. Let's go back to the cargo bay. And this is something that I saw the last time I ran this. All those updates have an expense. There was supposed to be a bunch of bad guys that beamed in. And they didn't. So that's not the byte's fault. That's got nothing to do with anything going on here. Since it is an MMO, I am relying on their servers to, not break things. And believe it or not, the first time I tested this mission went off without any bugs at all. But I forgot to record that. Here's our cutscene running at 50, 60 frames a second. Not bad. They really should have gotten some intern to voice that. And it's a real bummer that this is the only mission... Oh, man. That utilizes the transporter room like this. I can't think of any others. Because it does... I mean, it's a time sink, having to beam in and out through the transporter pad and take the turbo lift to and from the bridge. But it does give it more of a Star Trek feel as opposed to just a run through everything as quickly as possible and shoot all the things. Which, unfortunately, being an MMO is really how a lot of these missions turn out. You'll notice that as a tactical officer, my main goal is to make things die. And without playing as an engineer or a science officer, this mission basically unfolds. You save the day by blasting everything. You didn't save the ship, you didn't save any of the injured people because clearly you don't know how to do that and you don't have officers on your bridge crew for that. So you saved the day by shooting the Klingons and beaming them out before it exploded.
Attempting to get a transporter lock on Captain Broth, sir. Boosting containment.
I'd apologize for the spoilers, but Star Trek Online's not new. I think it just celebrated its 10th anniversary, and graphical updates notwithstanding, Stranded in Space still plays out the same way Stranded in Space does. Alright, so we peaked at 108 Fahrenheit, still 14.7 watts on the kilowatt. Not bad. Frame rates, we bumped up to 1600, 900, and still maintained frame rates I was happy with. I'd say, especially with a move to dual channel RAM and more RAM, there's room to turn on a couple of effects. I'd probably just start with something like the CPU post-processing, since that seemed to be where there was the most available room. I mean, the CPU was running at 40%. The graphics card was basically pegged, but seemed to want more RAM. All right, so I know I said we'd talk about benchmarks later, and kind of shoehorning this into the coverage on the Byte 3 because I glossed over them at the end. I had so much back and forth trying to learn to use new capture devices and just forgetting to hit record a couple of times that some of this didn't happen. In fact, I ended up fighting with the recording device. Right now I'm using the Upstream Dual that I've been using for that for a video with this camera, and found out it doesn't really like mismatched frame rates between 60 frames per second and 2997. Go figure. So our two big benchmarks, and there'll be a couple of extra slides in the written review with some prettier charts than you'll see here. But our big benchmarks are going to be Geekbench 4 and Geekbench 5. We've got a lot of data in these. I'm just going to pick out a couple of highlights that I think really frame where this machine is. Let's start with Geekbench 4 because I do have some additional systems in there, including the Byte 3, which is the direct predecessor to the Byte 4. Big changes from the Byte 4, newer generation CPU, and move from DDR3 to DDR4. Now, I misspoke earlier when I said that our Byte 3 sample had 8 gigs of RAM. I did get my hands on an 8 gig Byte 3, but that was not the review unit that was sent to me, although I have one in the studio. So these numbers are going to be a little lower than the 8 gig Byte 3 since it included a slightly higher clock CPU, but these are the ones that we used in our review for that unit. So starting off with Geekbench 4, we've actually got a healthy lead for the Byte 4 on both sides. 1414 and 4011 for the single and multi-thread results on Geekbench 4 respectively. For the Byte 3 turn into 1961 and 5742, a 38% and 43% increase respectively. Suffice to say, at least on the CPU side, the Byte 4 is roughly 40% faster than the Byte 3. And that puts it in a good position compared to a lot of the older systems that I have in that test suite. So I have 2 laptops and a desktop there, represented by a Panasonic CF19, a Panasonic CF53, and a Lenovo ThinkCentre M72E, having a i5-3610ME, an i3-3240M, and an i3-3220T respectively. These are all good candidates for comparison here. When they pulled in, starting with that 53, 2707 and 4990 for single and multi. When they pulled in 2603 and 5328, starting with the CF53, 3080 and 5990 on the CF19, which is actually the i5, and 2707 and 4990 on the ThinkCentre M72 with that 3220T. So overall, that puts the Byte 4 in the same league as those systems when we're talking about multi-threaded performance, but it does put it a bit behind single thread. Now, depending on your workload, this is a quad-core processor running sub 10 watt and has a much newer platform than all of these. None of these have USB-C on them. The ThinkCentre, in fact, doesn't even have USB 3 at all. Most of these only have a USB 3 port or 2 at most. So it's a bit newer platform-wise, and if you're happy with that performance class machine for your day-to-day workload, well, the Byte 4 is a lot newer. As units fail, I've had a couple of those M72s. I've had one. They've been fairly reliable. A motherboard failure on one, but plenty of things like hard drive failures, which I've been retrofitting them to SSDs as we go. It may make sense to start looking towards the newer desktop unit that, at $260, if I don't actually need more performance, but I would benefit from having a couple of USB 3 ports, a HDMI connector that's a newer generation, a display port, support for more and higher resolution displays. But these systems, my end users, they're, calling phone numbers out of a spreadsheet. The most advanced function they use 90% of the time is a VPN to access internal websites when they're remote, or a function we call click to dial, where they'll have a web page with customer information. They click on the link and then it causes their phone to ring. None of that needs a brand new i9 11900K. The elephant in the room, of course, those are all comparable systems. What happens if I've got something a few generations newer? Well, I've got my i7 6700HQ, which is in my ThinkPad P50. Now that is on Geekbench 4 represented by a 3881 single thread and 13047 multi-thread score. It is almost twice as fast across the board. Quite frankly, this is not for the kind of person who needs that level of performance, and the type of person who needs that level of performance may even be held back by that 6700HQ. I know I am from day to day. That's why I've got the dual Xeon desktop that there's a couple of videos talking about and a build video of. I would love to say it's done, but it's just 15 hours of footage has been a slog to get through on that, and it has choked my video editor a couple of times. So, Geekbench 4 results, pretty decent. Overall, you do get better single-threaded performance with some of the older i3s and i5s, but they're using more power. They're on older platforms. By now, it's all older hardware that's very dated. I would not tell someone to buy a machine that class if they needed just a utility system. I would tell them to buy the Byte 4, because by the time all's said and done, if I go buy something like one of these laptops, I might spend $150 on it on eBay, which is a reasonable price. You know, same thing for a little ThinkCenter like the M72. That might run me about $100. By the time I throw an SSD in it, by the time I add some more RAM to it, I'm getting real close to the price of the Byte 4 outright, and I'm on a much older platform that's going to start to show its age. Things like driver support, things like not having as much USB 3 connectivity. It's just not a great experience overall. Geekbench 5, our results are mostly the same. I'm not going to read off all of the numbers, but there's the chart there. Honestly, it's just the Geekbench 4 numbers rescaled to the new one. There is a little bit of back and forth positioning where some things are even more in favor of the newer system because there are new tests that have been added to the suite. However, for the most part, the positioning doesn't change a ton between 3 and 4. Or sorry, between 4 and 5. Really, that's it. The Byte 4 is great at emulation. It can hold its own in older game titles. That's really not what it's built for. If you're someone like me, it actually is an appealing item as an upgrade for failing and dated office equipment that is not necessarily the highest performing device in your arsenal, but is something that you need to function in. You need to trust that it's going to function. Overall, you know, no moving parts. It's fanless. Unless someone, I don't know, sends 24 volts to it by plugging the wrong AC power brick, I wouldn't really count on them failing anytime soon. 42 Celsius, 108 Fahrenheit. Warm to the touch, not terrible. But overall, not bad. We've been playing on it. This particular record took me just under 20 minutes. And I had actually run through Borderlands earlier for another 20 minutes. Would I want a game on it for 8 hours? No, it's not really built for that. At least not AAA titles or modern things. But it does fill its role quite well. And the role for this is actually a couple of places. And the reason we demonstrated games is they're the most visually interesting. Now, other stuff you can do on this, you don't want to watch me play around on it in an Excel. It's perfectly happy to do most of the work I use Excel for. And that includes manipulating, 7,000 row spreadsheets when I take time to benchmark an SSD and generate a ton of data and have it calculate averages and standard deviations and things like that and build a couple of graphs. It's not as fast as my Xeons or my i7s, but it's also not slow and terrible at it either. Could I build something in Excel that it didn't like? Well, yeah, it's Excel. You can make a spreadsheet as bad as you want. But more on topic, if you were using this for day-to-day normal office work, everyone but the accountant would probably be happy with it. And honestly, even they might not mind with how much of that has moved to the web and things like QuickBooks Online. Web stuff, coming back to that, it's got enough flexibility and enough power for most of that. And honestly, the CPU performs on par with the systems that I'm deploying right now for call center duties. Most of what I deploy are these. And all that's in this thing, this one has a i5 4200U. Most of the ones that I end up deploying are actually i5 3000 series chips, which aren't any slower than the 4200U because they're higher power chips, so it's a 25 watt Ivy Bridge chip versus a 15 watt Haswell chip. The end result is it's about a break even between those. And so this is perfectly capable of all the things those do other than leaving the desk. Now, thanks to the current health crisis, I don't have a lot of people sitting at desks right now, but when things come back to normal, and I do, this is exactly the kind of thing that they would be perfectly happy to have, since it would be more than capable of replacing their existing desktops, which happen to be i3 3220T units with noisy little fans. They're not bad desktops, but they get loud. And the upgrades I can make on that are actually worse than what I can upgrade here, because those only have room for one drive, not two. And they're all USB 2 ports. There's no USB 3 ports. There's no USB-C. There's no dual Ethernet. So if you are not necessarily looking for more performance because your application needs either haven't changed or moved online in a business environment like that, but you do need to make a technical upgrade, well, you know what? If a 3rd gen i5 or a 3rd gen i3 was fine for what you were doing for the past decade, you're not going to be upset getting a byte 4 or byte 3 even, because it's going to be just as capable, if not more so, and it's going to be a little easier on the power budget. And honestly, these are like $260 or so with Windows 10 Pro and a 64 gig eMMC chip. That's fantastic. I am going to go ahead and stop recording in OBS while I'm rambling. So that kind of application, it's perfectly fine. Offices, emulators, light gaming, that kind of stuff at home. I actually use a byte 3 on a regular basis in my entertainment center. You know, it's right there with the Xbox and the PlayStation for running older titles, for running, what's the word I want to use here? For running indie games, for running stuff that I can't necessarily, show you Project 64 running without incurring someone's wrath. But it's perfectly capable of those kind of things. And honestly, the byte 4 is a better unit than that, than the byte 3 was, just by virtue of having more ports and honestly a better video output selection. Let me grab my byte 3. So here's my byte 3, or one of my byte 3 units, and I've got 2 USB on the side and 2 on the back. I've got 4 USB on the side here, and on the back I actually get DisplayPort, HDMI, and VGA. We're using the HDMI now. So this moved all of the USB and the USB-C to one side. And if I was putting a byte 4 in a TV center, and my main use case was plugging in USB controllers so I could play emulators, I'd probably just plug it in lined up like that and leave all my USB ports facing there, and I don't know, set it up for Wake on LAN or something so that I could wake it up over the network and not have to worry about getting to the power button. And you're done. So that's actually a convenience thing for that application. It's also a fairly convenient thing if you were to VESA mount it. So you VESA mount something like this, and some of your ports are down and some are on the side. Well, the USB ports are what you want to get to more often when it's VESA mounted. Putting them here makes it easier to reach behind a panel and plug something in than having to reach down under and maybe knock the video cable loose at the same time. So I'm glad I put the two side by side. I hadn't thought that through until this very moment. I'm glad to see the temp falling down. We're down to 99 degrees after about 10 minutes, so bursty workloads is going to be perfectly fine for. Who else would want a unit like this? Well, I need to get some new files to demo for you because it's been long enough. I lost track of my old ones. They used to be on this SSD. If you've got a CNC device of some type that you need a control unit for, this is a great application. Yes, you can do it with a Raspberry Pi. But for workshop level systems, the fact that it's fanless, the fact that everything's enclosed pretty nicely, means there's less places for dust and dirt to get in. It's actually a pretty decent option for, controlling 3D printers, CNC routers, and laser cutters if you want a desktop for that. I know plenty of people who added even the older Byte Plus for that kind of thing, as well as various rugged laptops. Stuff like that. It's not about necessarily having a ton of performance, it's just about having enough to get the job done. Alright, so last one is Signage. Personally, I don't think that the Byte 4 is inherently perfect for most Signage applications, and it's not that I think that it would do poorly with them. I think that it's overbuilt. And what I mean when I say that is that I've worked with multiple Signage platforms. I've worked with Scala, I've worked with Rise, I've worked with Park Media, and right now I commonly deploy Zibbo. And the usual application is a single display running a single piece of content. And it might be a web page, it might be a video loop, and it might just be a literal static image. And more complex than that is I'll have slideshows and things like that. The Byte 4 is just a bit too big for that. The Access 4 is really a better option for that. The Access 3, the Access 4, I've got dozens of PCs like that. The Intel Gen 1 Compute 6, Gen 2 Compute 6, Access Plus, Access 3, I have all over the place because I just plug them into the HDMI port and that's it. They'll get provisioned and then you just plug it in. There's no keyboard or mouse attached. The systems that do have any interactivity are typically a touch screen with one USB cable. And you're done. So there's a few places where I've had to have more interactive experiences with more devices interfaced, sensors, webcams, more audio devices. I had one that had a couple of different headsets attached to it that the Byte 4 would have made sense with, but that's one display out of 100, not all of them. So depending on your application, I think it's just overbuilt for that. I don't think it's inherently a bad fit. I think that the stick style units are just a better fit for that. So take that for what it's worth and evaluate your own needs there. Feel free to yell at me in the comments if you think I'm wrong and this is the perfect Signage system. All right, I think that's enough rambling. So, quick recap. The games we ran, Homeworld, Minecraft, Star Trek Online, Borderlands, everything ran and was playable. Minecraft, we actually took the leap and ran the server directly on the unit. Star Trek Online, we bumped our resolution up to 1600, 900. Overall, things were fairly responsive. Frame rates were a bit lower than we wanted them to be, especially in Borderlands. But I think bumping it to dual channel memory would smooth a lot of that out, especially since we know that some things were simply demanding more RAM than the unit had. Office stuff, you know what, if you're happy with a low end or an older i3 or i5 now, you're going to be happy with a system like this. If you're doing big AI data things, you probably don't even want to consider it. Video editing, not necessarily its cup of tea, did better than its older units. If you're still editing video on a 4200, or sorry, an i5 4200U, you probably need to upgrade. But this actually gives equal to slightly better performance than my old ThinkPad Yoga did. And honestly, when I was just slapping together corporate videos in 1080, that was fine. You don't want to edit 4K on it. You don't want to edit VR on it. Signage, or sorry, emulators, perfectly fine. PlayStation 1 and 64 level stuff, grab it and go. Signage, just a bit bigger than I would like for signage, but it'll do it. And if you have a particularly complex signage display, you know, maybe something with a webcam and a touch screen and a keyboard and I don't know, separate microphone and a nice speaker, this is probably a better fit than the sticks. But if it's just a single screen that you're showing a web page or a slideshow or a video on, probably just stick with the sticks, as it were. All right. Closing out, I do want to thank Azulle for sending this particular byte 4. We did have a retail unit prior to this, but that ended up having to be deployed. And Azulle has asked us to go through and do the full upgrade routine on this. That'll be getting its own video. I want to thank Videotech for sending the P16C that we're using as our studio panel. Honestly, guys, this thing's great. I bought a touch one for work. Super handy to have in my laptop bag. I don't know why I waited so long to get it. The only thing that I don't like about it is that unlike the DuX Pro, it doesn't stick to the back of my laptop, but honestly, 99% of the time, this is better. That was just kind of cool to have it slide out from the side of the screen. Thank you to IO Gear for this. This is actually our first published demonstration using the, and I hate the name on this thing, the Upstream Pro Dual Video Capture Hub. It's just really long for a name. And yeah, this is actually the first time you've seen the DM1000 on camera as well. No, that is, there we go, 35C95F. I've been using it here and there, and other than I think I just shorted out the end of my thermal probe, it's been a good replacement for my older 7-in-1. There are functions missing that I enjoyed on my older meter. That said, there'll be a full teardown and a review of this at some point in the future. And we're still using our K600 TV as our studio keyboard, although as you saw, it is not necessarily the best if you're playing first-person shooters. Everything else was fine, but Borderlands is a little tricky when your right-click and left-click are both right here. All right. And as always, thank you to Electrix for providing our opening and closing themes. Thank you for anyone who helps support Pocketables, be it on Patreon, using our Amazon affiliate links, by subscribing and watching. It is support like that that helps make videos like this possible. And lastly, as always, thank you for watching.